Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. My name is Jaila Carter, and I have the pleasure of serving as BLSA's president for the 2020-2021 school year. And we would like to begin by having our opening remarks by Dean Barry.
Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to this conversation. I am so thrilled to see so many people joining us today, and I am so glad that you have taken some time to come and attend this afternoon. I'm also so appreciative of the leadership of BLSA for putting on this conversation, this important conversation that we are having today, and I greatly appreciate the panelists who are joining us today as well. Every day when I come into the school, I look up to the right as I go through the door, and I see the mission statement of South Texas. And it talks about opportunity. It talks about excellence. It talks about service. And it talks about diversity. And if you look at the numbers, South Texas actually does really well on diversity. The percentage of our students, the percentage of our faculty is very, very respectable. But numbers are only part of the story. Numbers have to be backed up by actions. Numbers have to be backed up by the community that we create. And one of the things that drew me to South Texas was the strength of that community, the strength of our family that exists at South Texas. I am always pleased. At first I was surprised, but then I started to become accustomed to people talking about the South Texas family. And when we talk about racism in our country, we recognize that many folks are very afraid of the conversation. They're afraid of unearthing what may be below the surface. They're afraid of looking in the mirror and recognizing what we may be doing well and what we may not be doing well. But it's important to have that conversation, because if we are a family, we care about every member of our family. We care about everybody. We care about diversity. We care about inclusion. We care about equity. We care about ensuring that we're looking at what we're doing well and what we're not doing well, and making a commitment to do something about it. Part of that commitment has to be learning. It has to be education. It has to be examining ourselves carefully to understand how we can be better. We're not going to solve racism across the entire country or the entire world. That's not going to happen in this. But what we can do is start a conversation about how we at South Texas can build on what we're doing well and challenge what we are not doing well. And it starts with listening. It starts with opening ourselves to the conversation and having the empathy to hear the experiences of others who have walked a different path, who have faced different adversities, who have faced different challenges. Challenges that, if we're candid, sometimes we may have placed in front of them. That's why I'm so glad we're having this conversation today, because it gives us an opportunity to listen, to hear, to understand, to empathize, and then to make a commitment to do something better tomorrow. I am so appreciative of those folks who are coming today and allowing us to learn from their wisdom, to learn from their experience, to appreciate what they have gone through so that we can understand better the experiences of our Black students at South Texas, of being a Black attorney in Houston. Thank you for being part of this conversation. Thank you for being open to it, to listen, to learn, and to commit to being better. Jaila, thank you for your leadership, and I turn it back over to you.
Thank you, Dean Barry. We appreciate you being here, and thank you so much for that warm welcome. We would like to, again, welcome each of you here today for joining us. We wanted to take this opportunity to host this event, Let's Talk About It, Lost Schooling While Black, because we just wanted to use our platform to open up the conversation. These are difficult conversations to have, but we wanted people to open up their perspective to see things from another person's view, just so that everyone can continue to feel welcome here, not just at South Texas, but at any law school or just any community across the board. Everyone should feel welcome. So I would like to begin by introducing some of our esteemed panelists. I will begin by introducing Dean Jenkins. Dean Helen Jenkins is currently Vice President Emeritus and Professor of Law at South Texas College of Law. Having been a part of the college's administrative team for 11 years, she now teaches full-time in the areas of wills, trust and estates, estate administration and guardianships in Texas. In 1992, she became the first African-American female law professor tenured at a non-minority law school in Texas. While her passion is law teaching, she is also a founding cast member of the all-lawyer musical theater company, Night Court, which raises money for Houston area legal aid organizations. She has performed as a principal in 16 local shows at the Hobby Center. Dean Jenkins is also the national anthem soloist for all South Texas graduations. Dean Jenkins, do you mind saying hello to everyone?
Hello, everyone. It's indeed an honor to be here. I'm so excited to share this moment with you. I look at the panel and I see so many various faces representing different times in our history. So I'm really anxious to hear what everybody has to say. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you so much, Dean Jenkins. Next, I would like to introduce Catina Perry. Catina Perry is a 2006 graduate of South Texas College of Law, Houston. While in law school, Catina was a member of Law Review and a championship moot court team. Catina was also historian for the Black Law Student Association, president of the Christian Legal Society, and a member of The Firm, performing arts group on campus. Catina received AmJur highest grade awards in civil procedure, torts 1 and 2, property 2, and evidence. Catina then served as a Langdale Scholar for civil procedure, torts, and evidence. Catina is proud of her diverse legal experience in the private and public sectors, which includes internships at the City of Houston, the United States House of Representatives as a Mickey Leland Scholar, the 14th Court of Appeals of Texas, the Federal Public Defender's Office, work as an associate in the International Arbitration Section of Fulbright and Jaworski LLP, now Norton Rose Fulbright, work as a volunteer prosecutor for the City of Houston, and a federal clerkship for the Honorable George C. Hanks, Jr. Catina also worked as a contract criminal defense attorney before joining the Harris County District Attorney's Office as an assistant district attorney, where she currently works in the post-conviction writs division. Catina volunteers as a sober court prosecutor and serves as the Southern Regional Director for the National Black Prosecutors Association, where she represents Texas, Louisiana, Arkansas, and Oklahoma. Catina also serves as a chairperson for the MBPA National Conference, Job Fair, and Youth Conference that will be held in Houston in 2022. In addition, Catina serves on the alumni board of South Texas College of Law, Houston, and the executive board for the Black Alumni Chapter. Catina, do you mind saying hello to everyone?
Hello, everyone. Thank you very much for the invitation to be here. Happy to be here. And before I get started saying anything else, just want to give a disclaimer that anything I say today is my personal opinion and does not necessarily reflect the views of the Harris County District Attorney's Office or District Attorney Kim Ogg. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Ms. Perry. Next, I have the pleasure of introducing Ms. Shaylin Green. Shaylin Green is an associate attorney at Jacqueline Smith and Associates PC. Her litigation practice focuses on the representation of clients in various legal disputes, including family law, personal injury, and general civil matters. In addition, Shaylin is a certified mediator with special training in family disputes and collaborative law. What Shaylin enjoys most about the practice of law is the ability to help others with their problems and provide solutions. Shaylin is invested in her clients' successes and committed to helping them succeed. Shaylin was born and raised in Colorado, but now calls Houston home. She earned her Bachelor of Arts degree from Xavier University of Louisiana and went on to work for 3M and AT&T. Ultimately, Shaylin decided to pursue her childhood dream of becoming an attorney, which led her to South Texas College of Law. In addition to her studies and various internships, Shaylin also participated in multiple mock trial, moot court, and alternative dispute resolution competitions while attending South Texas. She graduated cum laude and went on to receive admission to the Texas bar. When Shaylin is not working, she enjoys spending time with her family, traveling, crafting, and cooking. She also enjoys building new business relationships and helping others achieve their goals. Shaylin, would you please say hello to everyone?
Hello, everybody. Thank you for having me today. I'm excited to speak with everyone. And my boss did tell me that I better represent the firm well, so I hope I'm able to do that today.
I am beyond sure that you will make her proud. Next, I would like to introduce Miss Megan Mitchell. Megan is a May 2020 graduate of South Texas College of Law. She received a degree in biological engineering from Louisiana State University. Megan has served as president of the Black Law Student Association and has been honored as a Sidney B. Williams Jr. IP Scholar twice at South Texas. Also, while at South Texas, she was awarded with the Ryan Ewan Memorial Award, Pro Bono Honors Distinction, IP Law Section State Bar of Texas Award, Spouses of Houston's Barristers Award, Federal Bar Association Blask Fellowship, Presidential Fellow, and she was a member of the Nancy F. Atlas Inn of Court. She interned for the Honorable Greg Costa with the USCA, Fifth Circuit. In October, she will be joining the Houston office of Shook, Hardy, and Bacon as a patent prosecutor. In the fall of 2021, she will begin a clerkship for the Honorable George Hanks Jr. of the USDC of the Southern District of Texas. Megan resides in Houston with her husband, Wayne, and her son, Wayne Jr. Megan, would you mind saying hello to everyone?
Hello, everyone, and thank you so much for having me. I am looking forward to sharing my experiences and also learning from all of the other panelists this evening.
Thank you so much, Megan. Next, I would like to introduce Ms. Samantha Frazier. Samantha Frazier is an associate attorney at Jacqueline Smith and Associates PC. Samantha's practice encompasses the representation of a diverse client base in the resolution of complex legal disputes. Her practice covers a broad array of family law legal issues, including child custody, divorce, adoptions, and child support enforcement, as well as will and probate matters. She received her Bachelor of Arts degree in English Literature from Baylor University in Waco, Texas, and her Doctor of Jurisprudence from South Texas College of Law, Houston. While participating in family law advocacy while in law school and during her time as an associate attorney at Watts and Associates, her fever for the courtroom and litigation was ignited, which continues today as she fervently tries cases to verdict in state court, to the bench, and to juries. Although Samantha enjoys the courtroom, her number one priority is obtaining the best outcome for her clients. Samantha truly believes that paying it forward is the only way to be successful in life, and that giving back to the community is fundamental in making a difference. She's a proud member of the South Texas College of Law Houston Young Alumni Council, South Texas College of Law Houston Alumni Association Board of Directors, Berta Road Inns of Court, and Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated. Samantha, would you mind saying hello to everyone?
Hello, everyone. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much. And I would also like to introduce our only male panelist. Thank you so much, Kevin, for hanging in there with us. I would like to introduce Mr. Kevin Burns. Kevin Burns Jr. was born to Kevin and Mary Burns on September 3rd, 1986. He was raised in humble surroundings on the southwest side of Houston, Texas. Kevin's parents are educators who, through their passion for education, instilled in him the love for books. It is this love for books and education which planted the seed for Kevin and led him to graduate from Lamar University in Beaumont, Texas in 2008. Kevin claims he has always had a passion for artistic expression. Kevin attributes this passion to his mother because she is a graduate of the Art Institute of Houston. She often shared with him the wonders of the artistic world of which he is intrigued with. He attributes his love for mankind and public service to his father, who is a minister and a graduate of Texas Southern University's Barbara Jordan Graduate School of Public Affairs. Both parents introduced him to Christ as a child, which has ultimately made the difference in his life. While pursuing his education at Lamar, Kevin began to express his emotions about love through poetic writings. This blossomed to allow him to write his first book of poetry, Heart, Who Goes There? However, expressive poems are Kevin's beliefs. True expressions comes through actions. He spends a significant amount of his time mentoring and volunteering in his community, lessons taken from his family. Like his parents, he is involved in the education process and believes in its ability to help free others like himself from their surroundings. Kevin is a 2L part-time student and plans on graduating in the fall 2021. Since starting in fall 2018, Kevin has been involved in the Black Law Student Association and the Christian Legal Society. Kevin, do you mind saying hello to everyone?
Good afternoon. It's my privilege to be here and to be able to contribute. Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you so much to each of you for joining us today. And we are going to go ahead and begin with the burning questions that everyone wants the answers to. So I'm going to start by asking, implicit biases often results in mindless prejudicial behavior, where the communicator is completely unaware of the racial undertones in their communication. Can any of you talk about a time where you have experienced this and how you handled it? I would like to pose this question first to Megan.
In thinking about handling implicit biases, the most prominent examples that come to mind are when I am at IP events and everyone's mingling and socializing and getting to know each other. And you ask one of the typical questions such as, what is your background in? And I say biological engineering. And then the person repeats, biological engineering. And I totally understand how odd it is to have an engineer in law school, but at an IP event where you are required to have a hard science background, everyone in the room is either an engineer, a biologist, maybe a chemist, not as common in the Houston metro area. And just to have so many people at so many different events and on so many occasions ask me what my background is in, what did I do prior to law school. I have to go into detail about the research that I did on adult-derived adipose stem cells. Even though it was 15 years ago, I still have to keep it at arm's reach because I feel as though I have to prove my credentials as if everyone in the room, albeit 95% of the people probably don't look like me, but everyone's an engineer, or at minimum, they have a hard science background. And in dealing with that, I just try to remind myself that it is very uncommon to see someone who looks like myself with sometimes curly hair, sometimes straight hair, darker skin, high energy, have done all these things and it's considered to have attained a level of success. I don't think I'm super successful, but to certain people to have attained a level of success that many other people who look like myself haven't, I just try to remind myself that I am the example and I am showing people that they should not be surprised when they see someone who looks like myself.
Thank you, Megan. Kevin, would you like to share your thoughts on this question?
Primarily, I experienced it sometimes in academia. I remember one prominent time I experienced it was I turned in a paper and my professor asked me, did I plagiarize my paper? And I didn't think much of it at the time, but because I couldn't understand why he would have thought I would have plagiarized it. But then I thought about maybe, he didn't think I had the ability to write that way. So I've experienced that throughout my many different, throughout school. And also, just in an overall general sense, I think you experience it a lot as an African-American male, because a lot of times the higher you go in your education, there's not a lot of people that look like you. So you're always looked at as some type of anomaly or unicorn. And even though a lot of times you can get praised for that, it also isolates you and makes you feel like it's not common, when I think it is very common for individuals of color to be intelligent. Actually, it's kind of more common because of the innovative ways that people have had to overcome situations that they dealt with in the past. And so that's kind of some ways that I've experienced it. I know it's kind of a general answer, but it happens a lot.
Shaylin, I would like to pose the same question to you, but add the caveat of what advice would you give to students or faculty who encounter these kind of scenarios?
I think communication is key. In my experience, I always try to think of the other person coming from a place of kind of ignorance and less of an intentional thing to do, which poses an opportunity to have a conversation and educate them on how I'm feeling about the situation, how it may have come across, basically open up the conversation and let them know that, give them a different perspective, for lack of a better word. I think that a lot of times when we're dealing with racial issues, especially in the times that we're in today, people are scared to talk about certain things. So my advice is to not always take it offensively, which of course, when you have grown up and when you're a Black person and your experience have taught you that people treat you a certain kind of way or have treated your ancestors a certain kind of way, it's kind of automatically in the back of your head that somebody is saying something to be rude or to be hurtful. And sometimes that's not always the case. They may not have the experiences to understand fully what they're saying and how they're acting. And hopefully, I'm a Christian person, so pray for them. And hopefully they'll be exposed and they'll have, they'll behave differently in the future.
Catina, what are your thoughts on this question?
I've had some similar experiences, I think, to a number of people where I would get some kind of feedback about being very articulate. And I would agree with Shaylin that one way to handle it is, if the person is open to it, definitely have a conversation and just making them aware of the implications of what they're saying, because they may not be aware of it. And even within circles where someone has shown they're receptive to diversity and wanting to increase their awareness about diversity, sometimes I'll review their material and let them know, like, here you might say something just to encourage people to relate to someone that doesn't necessarily have the same background, instead of presenting it in a way of, well, why don't you take a risk on this person? Because to me, that can rub the wrong way. It's not necessarily taking a risk on a diverse candidate. If they're well qualified, it's not a risk. It's just trying to relate to someone that doesn't look like you or doesn't necessarily have your same background. So I think, especially as an attorney, if someone is willing and open to have that conversation, I like to do it offline. A lot of times not during the particular session or the meeting that you're having, but if you can have an offline conversation and just make them aware and educate them about the implications of those types of things.
Thank you. Dean Jenkins, I'd like to pose the same question to you and also add to it. Do you have any recommendations on how we might remedy the pervasiveness of this problem?
You know, South Texas has come a long way in 30 years. When I first came on campus, I was the only African-American person on the faculty. And when you are the only one, or you are the first one, you get all of that grief in the beginning that maybe you can do something about before the next person comes on. And so you're in the line of fire. Quite frankly, when I came to South Texas, and of course this was a long time ago, and we are a more diverse institution, I've watched that grow and have been very proud of the way that subsequent deans have poised themselves to make diversity something that is desirable on campus. But when I first came, there were two factions of people who had an effect on my future at South Texas. One of them was a faction of very outspoken and biased people. They did not want me here. They made it known that I would not be successful here, that I was a placeholder for when they could find somebody African-American who was deserving of the position. And they made comments about my color, that I was Black, but I wasn't Black enough. And this was a group of people that was particularly antagonistic. They would approach me in the hallway. They would talk to me in my office, always out of the voice, out of the earshot of other people, except those who had similar opinions. So just like with bullies, when you have a group of people who are unkind to you, it's best, I find, to separate them, get them one at a time. And so I went to the office of this particular person and I let go. I let go a lot of years of discrimination that had nothing to do with them, but it was my time, it was my space. And I closed the door and I let loose with some very bad language, I have to say. But it said to that person, you will not do this to me in this place. On the other hand, there was a group of very welcoming professors here at South Texas. Professor Elaine Carlson, Pamela George, and someone who became my mentor, Charles Weigel, who's no longer with us, who said to me, we really like you. We really like that you're here. We like what you add. And this was a welcoming group. So they were responsible for mentoring me, to showing me the ropes, what you need to do to get tenure, what you need to do about your scholarship, what you need to know about the institution. So I say to young people who are going into situations where you are the only one, or sometimes one of a few, is you need to find the people who are going to support you. They're there. You have to find them. Sometimes they find you. If they're the right kind of people, like these people that I'm talking about. And there were others on the faculty, not just those three, but they stand out because today, they are still my friends. And so there are people who will help you, but those people have to be invested in the whole idea of diversity. And you have to realize when you're going into situations like that, there are going to be those kinds of people, and then there are going to be the people who really don't ascribe to the idea that there's any value in your being there, and deal with them one-on-one.
Thank you, Dean Jenkins. Samantha, I would like to pose the next question to you first. Do you think it is important for students to learn about and be aware of the cultural and historical context of cases and law we discuss in classes?
I absolutely do. I think that, we're all Black Americans on this panel, and been in law school or a law school classroom. And inevitably, you have that Brown versus Board of Education case, or affirmative action case, or some racially driven case that the cultural background, because it allowed for you to be able to sit in that seat. However, your classmates aren't really as familiar. And I think that talking about that is giving your non-Black colleagues and classmates an opportunity to learn a piece of your history. So many times we read cases and we learn of American history, and we don't really learn. We have 1 month of Black history. And when we get into law school, we study a few cases that cover our history. And I think that in order to educate yourselves, not only on the history of African Americans, but of your future clients, understanding their perspective and where we were in history and where we're going and why this case came to be into the Supreme Court, I think it is truly important in legal education.
Thank you, Samantha. Catina, would you mind sharing your thoughts on this question and also adding to it, in what ways do you think we as a profession would benefit from this?
Well, particularly in today's climate, I think it's important that we know the cultural background, because it absolutely can affect the outcome of a case. And when we talk about, particularly in the criminal justice system, how we address disparities, there are questions that we need to know behind our cases. For example, a drug case that starts off with walking in the street where a sidewalk is provided. How many of those cases are Black defendants versus non-Black defendants? Is that something that happens in poor neighborhoods at the same rate as it does in wealthier neighborhoods? Those are questions that I think need to be asked. As well as I think about when I was reading Justice Sotomayor's opinion in Utah versus Strieff. And I felt like a lot of people just kind of took the majority opinion to say, you know, that's fine if we stop someone on a traffic stop and we may not have had probable cause, but as long as we find something after the fact, that's fine. But then for Justice Sotomayor to break it down and say, well, no, because you have a disproportionate number of Black and brown people with warrants to begin with, and they're being unnecessarily detained by police, this is a problem within these communities that we need to address. I think that it makes us better as a community when we're seeking equality, and as prosecutors, as we seek justice, that we consider those types of issues. So I think it's definitely important to bring those to the forefront and try to figure out how we can fix this by figuring out where those issues lie.
Thank you. So I'm going to go ahead and move forward with the next question. And I am going to start it off with hearing from Shaylin. Do you believe persons of color are responsible for bringing awareness to discriminatory issues in the legal community and the country at large?
I think everybody is responsible for that. As a minority, I think that we of course have certain experiences that are important, that need to be heard, and can kind of counter some of the other popular opinions that life is great for minorities, and if you put in hard work, and you can be the president of the United States. I think that there's a large portion of the population who does not understand the difficulties that African Americans experience on a day-to-day basis, and how it affects all aspects of our lives. It affects me as a mother, it affects me as a wife, it affects me as a lawyer. So definitely, I think it's important as Black people to speak out about our experiences and diversity, and push for diversity in diversity progress. But I also think that there is a large responsibility on people who are not Black. Everybody has a responsibility to ensure that justice that this country lives up to its standards of justice for all. Everybody has a responsibility to do that. And sorry if I offend anybody by my language, but white people would have just as much responsibility in that, and I actually feel like they have a little bit more responsibility in that. And the only reason I say that is because white people tend to listen to other white people before they're going to listen to me. So if we're in a meeting and somebody has said something that's offensive and I voice my opinion, the feedback that I have always received is, oh, you know, angry Black woman, and it's kind of dismissed. Versus for another white person to stand up and say, no, what you did is wrong. Sometimes they listen to it more. And we don't know what will impact the receiver. So I think everybody has a responsibility to say something. Everybody has a responsibility to take down our own walls and understand our own biases and prejudices and understand how it can affect the environments that we're in.
Thank you. Dean Jenkins, this next question is going to be posed to you. Was the school's mission about diversity the same in 1985? How have you seen this mission evolve?
Well, it wasn't here in 1985, but I came a couple of years after. But the mission has definitely evolved. Back when I was coming into the academy, you didn't hear much about it. You know, you heard a little bit about it, and everybody, you got the impression as a minority person that it was about the numbers. You know, let's be able to show that we have some minority representation. Here's a number here, there are 2 over here, there are 3 over here. And so it was more of a numbers thing. I think we took advantage of that. We did very well with that by promoting, you know, other people into the academy. But back then we didn't have a diversity statement. We developed mission statements over the years based upon advice that was coming down from the AALS, the American Association of American Law Schools, and the American Bar Association, that the profession itself needed diversity. And so therefore ideas about diversity and the impetus for diversity was thrust upon the law schools at that time. And this is how these concepts on diversity developed.
Thank you, Dean Jenkins. I would like to pose this next question to both Kevin and Megan. Did diversity in the faculty and staff at your law school impact your law school experience? If so, how?
Megan, did you want to go first? I just want to give the ladies the opportunity.
You can go.
Okay. So one, I do believe it impacts it greatly. Whenever there's a quote by the 100 Black men that say, what they see is what they'll be. And so as a young Black man coming into the campus, diversity, I think you're always looking for somebody who you can pattern yourself off of. And so there's a lack of Black men as lawyers, as professors. And so when you don't see that, you do have to kind of envision who you will be. But I think there has been overwhelming support by our Black female professors here, Professor Jenkins being one of them. And so that has given us that support we need to keep moving forward. But honestly, if I could be honest, when you look around and some of the only Black male staff members you see outside of Professor, I think it's Kenneth, is some of the security guards. You know, not to say that there's anything wrong with their job, but when you're looking around for somebody who has walked your path, who is probably emotionally reacting to the same things you see. When you see Trayvon Martin, when you see Eric Gardner, when you see these different Black males that are being murdered in the streets, and you come into the epicenter of justice, or this architectural like law school that's supposed to be like this big building of justice, and you walk in and you're looking for somebody else that shares your plight, that knows that even though you're learning about the law, when you look on you could be on the other side of that story, and you don't see individuals there. Sometimes you feel like you have to be your own mentor. You have to be both the person that you're looking up to and yourself at the same time. And then sometimes you realize that you carry that burden because if there's not a lot of individuals to look up to, then maybe someone else is looking up to you. That might not be the most articulate way to state it, but that's some of the things that I've thought about when I was coming to school and looking around for people of diversity.
Thank you, Kevin.
When I came to law school, I definitely noticed how diverse the faculty was. And I took that into consideration from the standpoint of, like Kevin said, I can see myself in someone else, someone who has walked my path, but also if they are comfortable here, then it is likely that I will also be comfortable here. And since I'm comfortable, I will be able to blossom and grow and succeed. And these things are important. These qualities and characteristics are really important when you're going through stressful situations that could occur. Several of us have experienced direct and blatant racism during our tenure, either in law school or in the legal profession. And during those times is when you need a support system, people who you can trust, people who empathize with you. And thinking about myself having just taken the bar exam and everything that was going on with that, it was actually someone, well, people who look like me, but someone who did not look like me, who texted me to check on me while I was studying for the bar exam to make sure things were going on. And we were, just to kind of piggyback on the question you asked earlier, we were able to discuss Sweat v. Painter and how that case made me feel, and discuss how the passage rate for African Americans is almost 5 points below what you need to pass the bar on the first time. I was able to have those kinds of conversations. Would that have been possible if I would have went somewhere else that would have been slightly cheaper and maybe had a slightly better name recognition? I did not get that impression when I was making that decision 3 years ago. So I definitely think it's important, and it's something for those people who are looking for somewhere to go, whether it be school or to a job, making sure there are at least people there who feel comfortable.
Thank you, Megan. I would like to open up this question to any of our panelists who would like to answer it. And the question is, could you explain imposter syndrome to our audience? And do you feel your law school experience was affected by imposter syndrome?
I would like to take that question, and here is why. Dean Jenkins won't tell you this story on this panel, but I will. Because I know as soon as I start telling it, she's going to remember this moment. My first year in law school, I come into Dean Jenkins' office bawling. I am crying. It's only 2 chocolate chip cookies in my class, me and one other person. And I'm like, I can't do this. I cannot do this. I don't fit in. I'm not good enough. I'm not smart enough. Dean Jenkins said, let me close my door. She hands me tissue and she says, Samantha, first, do you understand that law school is different from undergraduate? And I'm thinking, yeah, of course, right? It's a graduate program. And she says, no. You are used to being told you are smart, the smartest person in your class. You've always been told that. You've always been at the top. But law school is everyone at the cream of the crop put in one room. Everyone is at the top. And so you are just as smart as them, but it's not going to be as easy. And I say that to say because it reminded me, because I know imposter syndrome is where you don't feel good enough, where you don't feel like you belong. And part of it had to do with the fact that it was only me. It was me and one other girl, Ashley, who is my best friend now. But it was only us in our section. And after a while, it wears on you, because whether you want to address it or not, throughout this whole career, you look up law firms, you see one spot for you. You look up clerkships, you see 1 or 2 people who look like you, one male, one female. You look at advocacy programs, 3 people maybe look like you. And so you begin to ask yourself, well, is it because I'm Black? Maybe I'm not good enough, because consistently you don't see enough of you. So I think that this piggybacks on the previous question, is that had it not been for Dean Jenkins and understanding how I felt out of place and how I felt that I wasn't good enough, and needing that faculty of color saying, hey, I know how you feel, but you're just as good, if not better. You just are going to have to recognize that and get out of your own space. And I think that other students feel that way. And I think that being in this profession as a person of color, as a female, wears on you. And you do have some form of imposter syndrome that you have to just kind of get out of your own way. Dean Jenkins, do you remember that?
Thank you so much, Samantha. I
Hey,
really
just to piggyback on what Samantha was saying, I think we honestly all do suffer from some form of imposter syndrome. I'm sure this is not the first time that anybody has heard, you have to be better than they are. You have to do better than that. You have to be better. You have to do better. I don't care what they did. You have to do better. So essentially, we've always been told that our best, unfortunately for us, isn't good enough. We're always pushing ourselves, or at least I'll speak for myself. I'm always pushing myself to be better and do better. And I definitely think that BLSA, if it had not been for BLSA, y'all, I would not be here today. Had it not been for the support of other students who look like me, had it not been for the support of our mentors, Dean Jenkins, Professor Moore, Professor Rutledge, I thank you from literally the bottom of my heart. There were so many times when I was just deflated at South Texas. And honestly, there's been plenty of times I've been deflated as an attorney. But you have to find your support system. I think it's crucial. I don't think that you can succeed without that. And whether it be other students who are Black or not Black, who are championing you, I think you need that. We need, in my experience, I went to a HBCU. So graduating from an HBCU and then coming to South Texas, it was different. Obviously, the demographics are different. And I had to kind of reacclimate myself to how to be around people who didn't necessarily want me to succeed. So having that support when I was feeling low, it was crucial. So anybody who's struggling out there, you can do it, okay? You are smart, you can do it. Find somebody who will also say that to you, and then y'all go to the library.
Thank you, Shaylin. Kevin or Catina, or both of you, would you mind distinguishing imposter syndrome from the common inferior feelings, excuse me, law students of all races experience?
Sure, I'll start. My answer is in 2 parts. One, because as a lot of us have been told, law is a jealous mistress. Even though I am a homegrown Houstonian and I lived in Houston while I was in law school, I had to create a home away from home while I was in law school. So it was important to have diverse faculty and student organizations that I could go to and be a part of to relate on the levels that I'm coming from. So that's where you see the membership in BLSA, in CLS, in the performing arts group. There were different parts of myself that I needed to be able to relate to in law school. So from that standpoint, it was important to me to see that diversity so that I could relate on the things that I needed personally while I was in law school, because I had to cut off a lot of those things on the outside. I wasn't going to be as involved in the community and church and things like that. I was in law school. So, BLSA was one piece of me as a person totally that I needed to relate to, as well as having, Black faculty, Professor Moore, Dean Jenkins. I mean, those are people that I went to not just on the law school level, but on a personal life level. I was, the first person to go to law school within my family. I didn't know any attorneys personally. So as I was going through the process of interviewing and things like that, I needed their perspective to help guide me through that process. And I don't know that I would have been able to relate to someone on that same personal level had they not been there. So that's the first part. And then the second part really came up more as I started to work in a big law firm setting, because I tend to not be confrontational. I tend to give people the benefit of the doubt. So there were issues that I faced as a Black attorney that I didn't necessarily recognize were issues at first. I mean, literally people had to come to me and say, hey, did you notice that you're not getting invited to the same outings and the same lunches as some of your white associates? And I'm like, oh, wow, okay. And so it took another person's perspective in talking to other diverse attorneys to figure out that there were things happening to me or not happening for me that was not common to other associates. So unless you have that conversation, sometimes you don't even know what you're missing out on. So I think that's kind of how I would distinguish, one, just having a diverse background and having someone to be able to relate to on that level. And then two, you don't even necessarily know what you're missing if you don't have someone to reaffirm you in that area and say, no, this isn't unique to you. This is a real issue here that needs to be addressed with diverse candidates. And so that's something that definitely had to be fleshed out within the law firm setting. And through conversations with other diverse attorneys, I learned that it wasn't unique to me, but it was a wide-scale problem.
Do you mind if I add just to that just for a few seconds? I went back and forth whether I was going to come to law school, honestly. I think I went through that period for years. And one of the key conversations that actually got me to come to law school is when I was talking with a mentor, and I literally, somehow he was like this judo Jedi counselor or something. And he got me to finally admit that I didn't feel like I was good enough. And I hadn't felt like I was good enough since I was a child. And I think that seed gets embedded in people of color rather early, because you learn about your history, but you learn about your history up until a point. So you start with the framework of slavery, 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 oppression, oppression, oppression. We have to work twice as hard because our best is not good enough. And so you're always thinking about overcoming these obstacles. And then when you come into a point where you're going into a field where people in your family may not have conquered that, or people in your family may not have gone into that, you feel like many students feel in undergrad, like you're a first generation professional student. And with law school already being something that's going to be, I've never studied like I've studied in law school ever, right? And so once you enter into that and you don't have the affirmation, which I think Ms. Perry was talking about, you don't have that affirmation, and you're not seeing people affirm Black lawyers across the country, right? And so you don't know where that affirmation is going to come from. And so you might not know whether you're struggling just because this is a very rigorous academic experience, or if you're struggling because no one like you has ever done this. And then when you have to battle those frameworks and those seeds that have been planted in you and overcoming that, you need someone to come out and knock you out your head, like Samantha said, and tell you, you need to work. Because if someone or anybody took a chance and let you in here, then you need to take what a lot of us probably have is some faith and employ it and push forward. Because you don't only need to succeed for yourself, you need to succeed so somebody else can see somebody like them can succeed, and let them know that their mind and their ability is not limited to the hue or the degree of melanin in their skin. And so that's kind of the things that I've battled with, and I'm sure everyone battles with that. That's the differences I see.
Thank you so much. So my final question for the evening is going to be, how could a person who is not a minority help to combat discriminatory practices in the law school experience? And this is open to whomever would like to answer it.
I think we have a lot of members of our faculty who minority students really identify with. And, you know, we have kind of a built-in radar about people anyway, and we know who is simpatico and who is not. You can tell by their teaching. Sometimes you can tell by their approach to you. And I would say there are a lot of places that Samantha could have gone and she would have had a sympathetic ear and good advice. I really do. There are people on our faculty, on our staffs who are really, really good about sitting down with students and giving you that talk and giving you the encouragement that you need to go forward. I'm not saying that they've sat in your shoes or walked in your moccasins or whatever. They are just good people. And so I would say seek out people that you feel comfortable with. And I would say to people who are there to give advice, to really have an open ear. It's not about necessarily about your experience. It's about the experience of the minority student that's sitting in front of you. So listen. We really as a society just need to listen more. We don't listen nearly enough. We snap judgments about organizations. We snap judgments about people without sitting down and listening to somebody else's experience. So you as a student, you add to who they are as well. And you can get some really good advice, some really good encouragement from those types of people. And ask around. Ask around. Other students know where the bodies are buried. They know where the good people are whom you can go in and talk to. Jobs. Talk about jobs. Talk about other things, and you get to know people. You get to draw from their experiences. So I would say just be really, really open and find these folks.
Thank you so much, Dean Jenkins. We would love to continue to have this conversation, but we promise to only keep each of you until 5:30. We want to respect everyone's time, but we do genuinely appreciate each of you coming out these questions, just being open to learning a new perspective. We hope that this conversation won't be the first and last conversation. We are hoping that this is a start to having more difficult conversations and an interest in making more changes at South Texas and within the legal community. And I would at this time like to pass it back to Dean Barry to close us out for the evening.
Thank you, Ms. Carter. Thank you so much to the panelists. I want to take a moment because we are a family, and our Vice President of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion, Shelby Moore, lost her mother a day ago. Goldie Sarah Dickerson back in Maryland. And I know that Professor Moore is just a treasure to so many people at South Texas and so many who have gone beyond. And I just ask that you keep her and her family in your thoughts and in your prayers. And please say a prayer for Goldie as she passes from us. Second, I just want to thank the panelists for being part of this important conversation. I thank you for your courage. I thank you for your candor. I thank you for sharing your experiences with us. It takes a lot to get on a broadcast Zoom webinar in front of who knows and talk about your experiences, particularly in the culture that we have, where the racial issues can be divisive and can create challenges, and to be able to stand up and say, no, this is important and we need to talk about it. We're indebted to you. And I thank you for being honest with us and helping us have this conversation. As Ms. Carter just said, this is not the end. This is the beginning of our conversations, and I look forward to many, many more. The third question went to Ms. Green, and the question was, whose responsibility is it to raise awareness of discriminatory issues? And I loved your answer. It's everybody's responsibility. Darn right. It is everybody's responsibility. One of the concerns that I had when I reached out to BLSA after the killing of George Floyd and said, I want to do something, what can we do? One of the concerns I had, and I expressed to them, is I don't want you as the Black students here to bear the responsibility of having to do all the education, of having to train us and to have to take on that responsibility. That is our collective responsibility. And I own that. And we all own that, because the last thing I want to note is we collectively are responsible for South Texas. We are responsible for the culture of our community. It will be the culture that we create. And if we create one that is inclusive, if we create one that, as Professor Jenkins just mentioned, spends time listening to each other and making sure that we are supporting each other, then we succeed. Then we create that environment where diversity will thrive at South Texas. And it's more than just the numbers that Professor Jenkins mentioned, whereas the measure of success back in the 1980s. That doesn't matter to me. What matters to me is the heart and the soul and the spirit of South Texas. And if we create that environment, if we create that community that we want to have, then we thrive. Thank you all for participating today. Thank you all for watching and attending and for your great questions. Next week on Wednesday, the ACLU is going to hold a conversation, Black Lives Matter, a conversation about racial justice and law. I encourage you to attend that as well. Thank you to the Black Law Students Association. Thank you, Ms. Carter, for inviting me. Have a great evening. I turn it back over to you.
Thank you so much, Dean Barry, and we do appreciate you for giving us the platform to have this difficult conversation. And I know that we had many questions from some of our audience members. Unfortunately, we were not able to get to everyone, but if you are interested in having an answer to your question, please do not hesitate to reach out to us at southtexasblsa@gmail.com. We will be more than happy to answer any of your additional questions. But at this time, we would like to thank each of you for coming out this evening. We hope that you are all going to continue to live well, and we'd like to send a lot of love and light to each of you. Have a wonderful evening.